Erin Byrne writes travel essays, poetry, fiction, and screenplays. Her work has won numerous awards, including Traveler's Tales Grand Prize Solace Awards for Travel Story of the Year, and appears in a variety of publications, including World Hum and Best Travel Writing. Erin is writer of The Story Keeper, an award-winning film about occupied Paris. Wow, that's very interesting. She is occasional guest instructor at Shakespeare and Company Bookstore, yes, lucky, and is co-editor of Vignettes and Postcards from Paris, the first in a series of anthologies based on her workshops in different parts of the world, of which there is a URL here also, and we'll put these on our website also. Please welcome Erin Byrne.
Thank you to Carrie and Jean for inviting me. I wanted to talk for a minute about Alice's book, The Making of a Story. In my teaching, I use her developmental stages of a creative work. And so all of the stories in this book were really inspired by a lot of her ideas, so thank you. I actually had one of my writers from Paris email me this morning out of the blue, and she said, I just finished Alice LaPlante's Making of a Story, and she just said, wow. So the idea is to follow what triggers you into your real subject. And I just, obviously you're reading, you are getting to the real subject, but the other two, you're really getting there. So thank you for sharing. So I'm working on a collection, I'm going to move this up a little, on a collection of my travel stories about France called Wings from Victory. And the stories are arranged in chapters of 3 stories each, kind of in a deepest arc. And they're on topics. Basically, the theme is the gifts that I've received from France. So connections, and tastes, and there's a chapter on the film that I filmed there, and characters, and I'm going to read from my chapter about art. And in this chapter, I'm sort of thinking of all the arts, but how lovely that we can focus on the visual arts tonight. So I'm going to read excerpts of the introduction and very short excerpts of the 3 stories in this chapter. The chapter is called The Mystique of Art. The arts offer impressions and images that have been passed on through the ages. From the cave paintings in Lascaux to the thousands of statues which preside over parks, plazas, and porches, France is drenched in art. There can exist a loop of meaning from artist to viewer that carries the joy of Kandinsky's greens and yellows, the sorrow of La Bohème, and the audaciousness of Eiffel's Tower. Michelangelo sculpted his slaves during years of unceasing labor for pope after pope, often waiting for payment. And to me, the marble captives carry his own desperation. An elderly Renoir strapped paintbrushes to his arthritic hands, and his Gabrielle à la Rose has skin soft as a petal. The more we know of the artist, from a prisoner in Ravensbrück who sketched women in a variety of faceless poses, to a child who survived a tsunami and drew a picture, the stronger the jolt. Henri Cartier-Bresson's photos of Paris challenged me. Vincent van Gogh's self-portrait spoke to me. But the work of art that has most chiseled its way into my own life is the Greek statue, Winged Victory of Samothrace, who has done nothing less than give me her wings. How can a statue give a human such a gift? I have experienced a process I think of as the mystique of art, an on switch for the live current in which 3 essential things occur. First, an artist creates a work that is honest and authentic, with the artist holding nothing back. One can see such an artist operating in this flow. He is the writer whose pen seems to fly, the sculptor who coaxes angels out of marble, and the dancer whose body moves as if by an unseen hand. Next, the viewer, you and I, must be receptive to the idea that we may have an unknown need or hunger and open to the possibility of art touching upon it. Finally, the timing must be right, the stars, as they say, aligned to position us in front of this work of art. We find ourselves facing something that causes a frisson, the visceral physical reaction we humans have when we are truly touched, a thrilling shiver, a tingling shudder, chills, or goosebumps. When these three conditions are met, this mystique of art just happens. It can occur with all of us. You, me, a Stanford doctoral candidate, a world leader, or a 5-year-old. A case could be made that the 5-year-old has more open channels along which to receive these gifts, thus has an advantage over all of us. If you doubt this, keep your eyes peeled next time you are near a child who is mesmerized by a statue or painting. I invite you to venture out, follow your fascination with an artist or a branch of the arts, and find a masterpiece to let your mind's eye rest upon. Catch the life current of art. So I'll read very quickly excerpts of the 3 stories in this chapter. The first one is a story about the photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson, and it will be published within the next few months on the travel website World Hum. And the next story is about Vincent van Gogh's self-portrait, and that is actually on my website. So if you go to my website and you go down to the very bottom of my publications page, there's a link to it so you can read it in its entirety. And the last story was in the best travel writing. I usually have stories in these anthologies, and I brought this one. The one before this, I think, is the best traveling 2011, and that's the one that the Winged Victory story is in. And I only had one copy that I can sell, but. Okay, so the first story, Apropos de Paris, a conversation with Henri Cartier-Bresson. So I'm walking along the Seine, and Henri Cartier-Bresson, the photographer, just joins me on my walk. So he's walking along with me, and I live in Washington State. I sort of go back and forth between the Bay Area and Seattle. So I have the wet and the dry. But anyway, he's telling me how he photographed his home, Paris. So I'm just going to read from 2 different parts of the story. I'd seen the verdigris statues on the roof near Notre Dame's spire my entire life, said Henri, but in my photo, they move. Taken in 1953, his photo captures the impossible. One apostle twists under the blackened spire. Behind him, another holding a sword rotates on his heels, and yet another slowly raises his arms. So he walks around Paris in this story, and he sort of shows me all the different photos he took of Paris. I made Notre Dame statues move, said Henri. Now you do the same with Washington State. Your eyes have been opened by Paris, so bring home the vision. It is apropos, the right moment, for you to make metaphors for the shimmering shade of green that only appears after constant precipitation, the silhouettes of fir trees in your front yard at bright blue dusk, and the colors of Washington State. The next excerpt is from Eye to Eye with Van Gogh, in which Vincent speaks to me about my own writing and the way I write about my own harsh truths. So the story traces his life and with a special focus on his painting of portraits. Self-portrait, September 1889, was Van Gogh's leap into the void. He looks fearful inside his cocoon of gentle swirls, but his eyes sustain calm. His sensitive mouth shows a warrior's steely resolve, and between his lips is the thinnest of blood-red lines. The bloody line is Vincent's harsh truth. It emerged during those times he had to dig deep to find the strength to pick up a paintbrush, for any stability he had was fragile. And then this is the beginning of the Winged Victory story. Imagine being placed at the top of the main staircase inside the most visited museum in the world. Daylight streams from a ceiling of high white arches, bathing and illuminating you in shimmering light. You are exposed with no shield from thousands of daily visitors. You have neither head nor arms. Winged Victory leans forward on the prow of her ship atop the sweeping Darius staircase inside Musée du Louvre. Her legs, caressed by wind-whipped fabric, are sturdy. Her chest is held high and her feathered wings fly out behind. She beams with boldness, as if she knows exactly who she is. I clicked along the marble floor in my Franco Sardo boots, a modern woman, chic, savvy, worldly. But when I saw her poised up there, admirers from all over the globe gazing worshipfully, I stopped and stared. I'm not easily intimidated, but she had me. Winged Victory had something I lacked. So, I encourage you to find your mystique of art. Think of a work of art that touched you. It's not always the prettiest work that you see. Perhaps this work has something to say to you. Perhaps it triggers something inside of you that you can follow. There's a reason why you thought of it, a connection. What is it? Go towards that mystery. And I wanted to say that all of the work in this room is the work of Charlotte, who's behind the desk. And I spend, only about 5 or 10 minutes talking to her, but it really gives depth to her work. So at the risk of overrunning Charlotte, I would urge you to have a conversation with her about her work, because she's very articulate in how she is kind of explaining the thread that runs through her work. But I would love to hear from you on what works of art have touched you. And I don't know, do we have time for a little discussion or? Okay. I mean, I would like to ask you if you have any works of art that you've had that experience with, or I will take questions too. Does anyone have any experience of that frisson, that shiver?
Yes. Goya's The Fifth of May.
Can you talk about it a little bit?
It's hard for me to talk about. I mean, I haven't thought about it for a long time, but there's something that every time I see it, I'm just electrified.
So I would suggest to you to just start asking yourself questions about why. Like what? Like really take a look at that. I mean, obviously the image in a book is not the same as the real painting, but if you have it, just look at it and see what comes up for you and keep sort of following that thread, because it's always interesting when we do that. So I'd love to hear from you if you do more thinking about that.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
When you're looking at art, do you think more about the piece, what's there, or do you think about the artist, or both of them?
Well, I think about both, but it probably depends on the work of art. I mean, when I was in Musée d'Orsay and I walked in, they've redecorated, reorganized that museum, and they used to have, just like this is with Charlotte, they would have all of Van Gogh's work in one room. Now it's kind of mixed, which is very interesting. But when I first went there, all of his work was in one room, and I knew so much about him. I'd read his letters, and I really had studied him. And so when I walked in the room, I just felt like he was there. And when I went up to it's the self-portrait that I'm thinking of is the light-colored one that has kind of the turquoise swirls, and it's got a lot of white in it. And, so that was definitely the artist. Like, I felt like he was speaking to me through his painting. On the other hand, the Winged Victory, obviously the artist put that in here, whatever that confidence is that she has, the way she stands, but it's the actual work of art that really kind of intimidated me or just floored me. So I suppose it depends. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share? Yes?
It's interesting what popped in my head when you asked the question. In the Forum in Rome, way back in one of the corners, and I haven't been there for a few years, so I'm not sure if they have restored it or not. There's a wall with some murals that are almost faded. I mean, they're from the earliest times, probably only recently founded, like in the last 10, 20 years. Right? And they're almost faded, and that's what popped in my head. They're beautiful, but you can just barely glimpse them. But there's something about that ancient element of it. And I love ancient art and archaeology and anthropology and all that. And that popped in my head.
Interesting. And the another kind of travel theme that I'm dealing with in the chapter I'm working on right now is called Secrets. And it's about finding the secrets of a place. But it's also that thing of kind of being prepared when you go there and knowing about the history and knowing about the archaeology and knowing that.
That was what hardly anybody knows about that.
Right.
So that's why I was just
Right.
thank you.
Yeah.
It was a secret place.
Yes. Interesting. Thank you. Anyone else have anyone over here, the quiet side of the room? Okay, well, I would love during the break, I think we're going to have a break, but I would love to hear your stories about these experiences with works of art and ask Charlotte about her work. So, thank you.